So for now, let's bring in Bernard Zapor, who's a former special agent in charge of the ATF. And Bernard, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, under these circumstances, we do know that ATF is en route to the scene. What are they going to do once they get there? What's the first task?
It is unfortunate, and the fact that this is happening again and will happen again. ATF's role when they respond to the scene is going to be support the local law enforcement. They're going to provide a number of sort of immediate intelligence information that will paint a picture in retrospect of the gunman because of the life of the firearm. That's one thing. Additionally, they're going to bring in resources to incident command and management of the scene to help the local law enforcement deal with the fact they have to transport triage and do all the public safety services that have to happen and give them a big relief on the investigative aspect of this. That's sort of their initial touch.
Yeah. Just to update our viewers who are just joining us here, it's 2:32 here on the East Coast. It's 12:32 in El Paso, Texas, where we have reports of multiple people shot. Local media reporting as many as 18 people shot at a mall, the Cielo Vista Mall, which also contains a Walmart and a Sam's Club on the nearby parts of the property. And we believe the shooting, from eyewitnesses, which we have heard from, began outside of the Walmart and then quite possibly went inside. We have one witness who told us that she saw a shooter wearing black and cargo pants and carrying a rifle and firing off multiple rounds right in front of a Walmart and then moving inside. We had another eyewitness tell our own Garrett Tenney that his mother was killed by the gunman. Garrett caught up with him right outside of the mall right after this all happened when he got there to the scene. Sir, just tell us, when you see stories like this happen again and again and again, how does that make you feel as a member of the ATF?
Well, we're also looking into it as this is societal damage.
Yeah.
We have a mass narcissism happening in our country. It's almost driven by a need for adoration. I hate to use the old term of copycat, but people can obviously see there's a self-gratification in the attention that this type of mass homicide creates. There are a number of things as a society we have to be aware of and anticipate. Number one is, let's assume these events are going to take place. And if that's the case, then every single person needs to go through run, hide, fight training. They need to know that you might be presented with an option. You might not have all three, but you might have the option of running, hiding, or fighting in its different variations. The other thing is a very simple, and hospitals teach this for free, is a stop the bleed training. It's the first 3 minutes that's going to save somebody's life before EMS gets there. There's a very dramatic video that you're broadcasting right now of the police officer who's there with an M4 assault rifle and a riot helmet. He's there to engage a shooter. That part is stopped, and now he's applying a tourniquet to a standard wounded woman. That's the new norm here. But as a society, those measures we can take ourselves, in addition to addressing this sociopathy and this need for adoration through murder.
You talk about the societal damage, as you called it, this mass narcissism. I'm curious, what do you think we need to do to stop that? Can we at this point?
I think, obviously, there's a larger mental health aspect here. It's been discussed every time these things have taken place, all the way back to 1998 with Columbine. And obviously, recognizing somebody's potential and having engagement with them is not necessarily stopping these acts. In terms of a larger, broader recognition of this societal norm, we're going to have to take a deep look at this. This is a combination of mental health professionals, academia, society, leadership, churches, places of worship, to look at why are we trending this way? What is the need here for people to find this recognition and not recognition in faith or love of family or some other greater, higher purpose?
A lot of people talk about, everybody wants to blame something, right? And a lot of people in this country think that guns are the problem here. It sounds to me like you think this is a mental health issue.
I do think it's a mental health issue. The firearm reality in the United States is there are so many here, they're not going away.
Yeah.
They're available. The Supreme Court has spoke to the Second Amendment. It's a tool of the trade for this type of issue. The bigger issue here is the causation. And causation is not the existence of the firearm necessarily, it's the use. The firearm perpetuates in the ability to do this so quickly. I mean, if you look at our preceding shooting, right, in the Garlic Festival in California, law enforcement engaged and stopped the shooter under 2 minutes, which is amazing. That Garlic Festival had prepared. They had armed law enforcement there for this event, but there still was casualties. You look at an active shooter with, if you take a aggregate of a 4-minute response of law enforcement responding, because law enforcement has a singular objective when they get the call for an active shooter. That is to stop the shooter. If there's only one officer that arrives, he or she is not waiting for backup. They're going to the place of fire and threat to stop it. But even in that time gap, we have to save ourselves through training and then the broader issue of why are we doing this.
Sir, details are still coming in at this point. This obviously happened just in the last few hours. What we do know from eyewitnesses anyway is that this shooting happened in the parking lot outside of a Walmart, and then the gunman, again, according to witnesses, made his way inside the Walmart. Now, the video that we've seen that's come in, again, just more information and more videos starting to come in, and our reporting from Garrett Tenney on the scene is that the Sam's Club, which is also in that, general shopping area, if you will, that area parking lot, that the Sam's Club was used as a triage. So you look at that video that's on the bottom corner of your screen right now, and that's in the Sam's Club. That's where they are triaging victims. So at this point, we don't know any information about the shooter. We did hear that it was a man wearing a black T-shirt and cargo pants. That is from an eyewitness. That is not from police, again. We don't know the status of the shooter or shooters at this point. The last thing that we heard from the El Paso Police Department 27 minutes ago was that the scene is still active, that there were multiple reports of multiple shooters. So we don't have much to go off of. But, what are police doing right now that you can tell us at this point?
I think there's two takeaways that we can look at this event right now and, say, the preceding event in California. Even though they had the shooter down, they did not call the scene secure because they didn't know if there was more than one. They had engaged with one, but until they know that there's not another one, they are still searching for the potential of another shooter. When you approach a mass casualty scene such as this, it's almost imperceptible that one person could kill 18 people within a matter of several minutes. And so there's going to be an assumption. It's going to be very slow for law enforcement to call the scene secure until they have 100% confidence that whoever they have stopped, if they've stopped somebody, is all that's involved. Yeah. So the primary function that's going on for them right now is ensuring that there's no further threat. The simultaneous process is the triage of victims, the evacuation of the non-wounded, and trying to process the fact that you're going to have mass casualties going to hospitals needing medical care. And as demonstrated in the Las Vegas shooting, people have to be triaged on scene. There's not going to be even an opportunity to transport them all necessarily at one time to trauma centers if they need it. So the triage that's happening there from trained medical personnel, there's, I'm sure, in this, amongst the customers there, that you're going to have nurses, you're going to have EMTs and firefighters and people that are providing care. They're switching their role of shopping on Saturday with their family to saving somebody's life. Those are the main processes that would be happening right now.
It's interesting what you said about the idea that there's always the potential of multiple shooters, and you really can't rule it out until you really know for sure. Because we're looking at now, it's been over an hour and a half probably since this call came in, and one would think the response time was a couple minutes at worst, and you would just assume at this point that police would have engaged whoever or whomever was involved in this. And you would think that you would assume that there would be some kind of a resolution at this point. And what you're saying is there may very well be, but until police know 100% for sure that there's not more than one, because El Paso police did say that they had multiple reports that there were multiple shooters. But if there's just one, that person may very well already be dead. But they still can't say the scene's clear until they 100% know, just like we saw in Northern California.
That's accurate. And, unfortunately, and this is a fear that others have, when you look at bombings in the United States, one of the unique bombings of Eric Rudolph was that he planted, this was the Atlanta 1996 Olympics park bombing, he planted a second device. And when he put abortion clinic bombing, he put a second device for the purposes of killing responding law enforcement first responders. So you could anticipate, I would say, potentially, that a shooting event could happen where you have a single shooter that goes in, does this, they've given their life for this purpose, they know they're going to die, then you have the response, and then a second shooter comes in. Law enforcement is thinking in terms of that aspect, and until they completely feel confident that there's not a threat, They are not going to call this thing secure.
Bernard Zapor, thank you so much for joining us. Former Special Agent in Charge, ATF. We really appreciate your time. Again, unfortunately, under these circumstances, but thank you very much.